So this is episode 10 of our Marketing Masterclass webinar series that my business Outlaw Social has put on. The logic behind it was to just provide some tools and tactics to business owners, marketing managers, people within businesses, while they've got a little bit more time to try and equip themselves with the skills and just generally just golden nuggets from people who know what they're doing, to set them up for success, I guess, throughout and post COVID-19. Today we're speaking about customer retention, and we've got Nick Cole, who's introduced himself up there. Nick works, he's the Chief Commercial Officer for Float. I'd like to get a wee hands up if anyone uses Float cashflow software in their business just now. I definitely do. That's interesting. So we're going to be speaking about customer retention and how to create remarkable moments in your business. Customer retention is a really exciting topic for me. It's something I'm quite passionate about. And I guess in marketing speak, it's much cheaper. It's much in terms of cost. It's much cheaper to keep a customer than it is to win a new customer. And customer service is so important, especially in times of uncertainty and crisis. And there's loads of interesting points that we're going to cover on that today. But to get us started, it would be nice, Nick, if you can just give us a little bit of background as to who you are and your position in Float. That would be great.
So as Lee said, I'm the CCO at Float. I've actually been at Float about a year and a half. My background for the previous 20 plus years of my career was agency. So I was a director of a big digital agency in Edinburgh, and then managing partner of a brand and marketing agency. And then just after I made the transition, I think it was probably felt time of having done that level of a stint in the agency world to try something different. So I moved over to Float just a little bit over a year and a half ago. So I think sort of coming from today's perspective, I'll be able to come at today's perspective from quite fundamentally different angles. So keeping and retaining customers within the agency world, and that tends to be, that is a fewer clients, higher net value piece versus Float is, we're a software as a service business, so we're a SaaS business. So we have thousands of customers paying us small amounts every month. So retention is really important for us, but probably less so on an individual basis than within an agency environment, where if you lose your one big client, that could be curtains. So there's slightly different approaches there. A little bit of background about Float, seeing as nobody put their hand up. I'm not going to do the sales patter full on, but Float is a cash flow forecasting and scenario planning app. So we've been super busy, particularly over the last 10 weeks since the lockdown happened, because I think what we've found is that cash flow is super crucial in most businesses. I think most businesses, all businesses really, cash flow is a really important thing, but not all businesses understand that fully and have a handle on it fully. So the reason that Float exists is that we plug into cloud accounting applications. So we plug into QuickBooks Online, Xero, and Free Agent. And what accounting packages very much look backwards. So they will provide you with a historic picture of how your finances look. But what Float does is it takes all of that information and enables you to see forward. So it enables you to see down the road what's coming. What does my cash flow look like next week, next month, in 3 months, in next year? We use historic transactions to help you model that. And then you can also layer on theoretical sort of what if scenarios. So in the current climate, we've found a lot of requirement for people to think, well, what if I furlough staff? What if I lose this client? What if my revenue drops to 80%, 60%? What would that look like for my business? and it gives you a visual picture of that, and it's updated live as you're being paid and paying things. So we definitely, and I'm biased obviously, but I think coming from an agency point of view, I'm sure Lee uses Float. It's quite a spiky cash flow business. It's difficult to predict necessarily where the next bit of work's coming from and what your pipeline looks like. And certainly in the current climate, that's sort of squared everything. So that's where Float comes at things from, and we're very much aimed at helping small businesses. So from a COVID point of view, we jumped on really early in the lockdown process and offered an extended free trial to small businesses until the end of May. So that was like a 10-week extended trial, just because we understood that small businesses necessarily didn't have a handle on that, and maybe would manage to get by under normal circumstances, but now they very much needed to see what was happening. So that's a little bit of a background about Float. So and basically what my role, I wear a few hats at the moment. My title is CCO, but I do manage the marketing side of the business, and I also manage the sales and customer success side of the business. So from a retention point of view, that is crucial. And I think I would mirror what Lee said in terms of, it's easier and cheaper to keep your customers than it is to find new ones. It's much more complex and much more time consuming, and generally businesses work a hell of a lot harder at getting clients than they do keeping the ones that they've already got. Absolutely. Which sort of doesn't make sense when you look at the numbers and you start breaking that down.
Cool. Thanks for that, Nick. I'm just going to let
I ask? Sorry.
When you go, Paul.
Jump in. Could I ask? Does your product does it plug into like Xero or QuickBooks, but does it work standalone without?
It doesn't, Paul. Actually, and the reason for that is that it's a live. The purpose of Float is to provide you with a live picture. So it being fed from your accounting package is a really important part of what Float's there to do.
Yeah. Okay. And does it plug into all the different types, so Xero and QuickBooks and all the other main ones?
We integrate with Xero, QuickBooks Online, and Free Agent at the moment.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
I am just to jump in there. I've very recently started to use Float, and we've had to recruit a handful of new team members over the past couple of weeks, and I had a bit of fear because I thought, right, I'm going to have to get the spreadsheet out, which I don't really know how to use properly, and I'm going to have to try and put in the formulas and build it out. But it just connected with Xero, and I was able to see different scenarios. It was a bit of a game changer. So I'm a big fan.
Cool. I haven't paid him to say that, by the way. It's fine.
Right, let's get right into it, Nick. That was a really useful intro, so thanks for that. My first question is around obviously customer retention, but I'd like to understand what customer retention means to you, and what role it plays in Float. That would be useful to get us started.
Okay. So I think actually, to follow up the point about retention being super important, I think actually now, not only just in the COVID situation, but just generally in 2020, retention is harder than it used to be, potentially, because there's just a paradox of choice out there. I think the internet has made that even more important. And actually, it's raised expectation levels as well. So I think the social media and the ability to be sort of always on has raised most consumers' expectations as to what your comms will look like and what they can expect and how rapidly you might be able to respond to things. So that brand loyalty piece is really important. And I guess for us from a Float point of view, we lead with a trial. So at the starting point for Float is that we provide a free trial. So our starting point of Lee and anybody else that uses Float will get a period of time to sort of get into Float. I think it's really easy to be presumptuous about your service or your product in terms of people are just going to get it and like it, and understand it and want it and pay for it. And we've been doing a lot of work recently on that onboarding and really trying to dig in to understand the customer drivers. So I think as a starting point, just for marketing, but that follows through to retention, you really need to understand the customer pains or the customer requirements as a starting point. Because without that, it makes acquisition and then retention much more difficult. So we're doing a lot of work to try and understand what our different customers want and need, to start trying to break that down, because Float theoretically works for every type of small business on earth. And that therefore makes it quite easy to talk generically to people. And I just think as a rule of thumb, the more specifically you can speak to someone, the more likely that is to resonate with them.
Yeah.
Bless you. So I think, in terms of customer retention, we have our customers go through a typical funnel. A small business customer, we're marketing in lots and lots of different ways. They will tend to enter a relationship with Float via a trial. I think we've perhaps been guilty historically of presuming that once we've got them in a trial, that our customers then know what they're doing. And I think I would definitely guide you away from assuming. So really hold hands, really make sure that you're helping someone succeed with your product in the first place, so that they're really sure about what they're going to get from your product, and they're not entering the relationship sort of thinking they know what they're going to get, but then their expectations. So set expectations and try and educate and try and get your customers to a point where they're very clear about your brand and what you're going to provide them as a starting point. I think from that point on, the challenge that we really face at Float with retention is around perception. So I think the biggest, I'm being very specific here, I think our biggest challenge is that people often enter the relationship with Float in a firefighting mindset. So they'll often think, I'm in trouble, my cash flow is terrible, I need something to help me get my way out of this. And they'll look around, they'll find Float, they'll plug it in, and they'll come into the relationship with Float in a sort of a churn mindset, if you like. Rather than thinking where we want them to think, and where Lee hopefully is thinking, and I think he is I'm using Float as a view down the road. I'm using Float proactively rather than reactively.
Yep.
So I'm using Float to plan ahead and to see what's coming, rather than it's already come at me and I'm trying to fight against it. So a big part of our challenge is preempting people's mindset before they actually become a Float customer, or on the cusp of when they're becoming a Float customer. Because actually, if we do a better job of that, then by definition, people are going to enter the relationship with our software not thinking that this is only going to be for a certain period of time, and then when my cash flow is better, I'll not need it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a really fundamental challenge for us.
And I think that relates to, I guess, for any service-based businesses that are listening. Just on your point about that expectation setting, I think a lot of the trust building and relationship building that is established with customers is kind of in that first 2-3 weeks process. So speaking from an agency perspective, our job as a service-based business is to build trust as early on in the relationship as possible and set clear expectations about the results that people are going to see and when they're going to see them. And when we've failed on that in the past, that's when we've experienced churn, people leaving us. But when we've really hit that, and it might take us a month to onboard the customer depending on the type of project, but as long as we've got really clear communicative points throughout that month, then actually customers are delighted. So it's just it'd be quite interesting maybe if we just use the reactions or the chat box, but if you guys do, maybe just give us a thumbs up if you have an onboarding process. It'd be good to get a visual of who has an onboarding process just now, because I think it's pretty fundamental. Yeah, we've got a couple of thumbs up.
Because I think it's really easy to assume. I think a lot of people think that the job's done once the customer is showing an intention to, well, once a lead has shown an intention to become a customer, either via signing up to a trial or signing up to your service. I think it's really easy to exhale and think that the job's done, and then I'm going to go and find some more, rather than think, well, I need to make sure that this person understands what they're getting, why they're getting it, when they're getting it, that they really appreciate that you communicate really clearly to them, that you guide them through that process. So we're doing a lot of work. I think we've maybe thought that historically, and we're definitely doing a lot of user testing about, and it's throwing up some really interesting things that we're looking at. Actually, we thought that that was really clear, but this person is struggling with that, and this person is struggling to understand this is what you should do first, or this is where to find the information that they need. So just really, really taking a step back and almost gearing an onboarding process to the lowest common denominator. Don't assume, just be like, look, you might already know this, but. So I think that onboarding piece is really key. So through the trial period, we will have nurture campaigns. So we will be emailing people. We have educational guides. We have webinars running every week that people can jump onto. We have a lot of video. We have a help center. So we have an online, we're talking about technology, so we have an online a chat area where people can ask questions of our support team live. So all of these sorts of things. Now that might not be possible for your business, but just having clarity about the fact that you're not on your own, that I'm going to try and set you up to succeed. And then if you've got any questions, this is how you can ask them and where you can ask them, rather than someone thinking, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to stumble along. And then ultimately, I've never really got it, so I'm going to leave.
Yeah. And we live just, I'm very intrigued by this point just before we move on, but in our agency, we kind of have a mantra, and it's because we're service-based again, if the customer doesn't know about it, then it's not happened. And we live by that, and that's kind of like a communication first approach. So a lot of the work we do is pretty detailed. So for example, if we're building a website for a customer, the groundwork involved in that, the keyword research, the competitor analysis, the building the brand guidelines, it takes us a month before the customer can see a mocked up homepage. And it's because we have to follow a process. And if we were just to leave it a month after the deposit's paid, the customer would be, losing their shit. Sorry for swearing. But we help guide them and show them the methodology through the whole process, and it just makes such a massive difference. And hopefully people resonate with that in their business. Like if you do technical work, just like you says, it's sometimes really important to bring it back down to layman's terms and make an effort to explain the process, and it makes a massive difference.
Certainly with my time in agency, I was the point guy for most of the time. So I was the business development guy and owned a lot of the relationships, and I'd be generally the person to go in, and you're talking in generally, our clients would have been non-technical. They wouldn't, that's why they're hiring an agency, right? So I think, you know, it's really easy to assume that someone's knowledge base is up the food chain from where it actually is. So I think, you know, if you think about an agency, a lot of my job was translating, actually, was like, well, here's the technicalities, I'm going to break it down into terms that you can get and understand. And it's the same at Float. You know, I think it's really easy. So Float is, you know, we talk about Float being a really intuitive piece of software, which I think it is, but it's a complex piece of software as well. You know, it's dealing with your finances. There's not just one box with one number. I think it's really easy to assume that people are really au fait with their accounting packages, or really connected with their numbers, and actually a lot of business owners aren't. You know, a lot of successful business owners aren't even. So I think just don't assume that someone's further forward than they maybe are, because I generally think people who are further forward won't get offended by having something reaffirmed.
Yeah.
Could I ask another couple of questions?
Go for it. Absolutely.
There's two things that you've talked about so far. So one, you said it costs more to bring in new clients than to retain existing ones. Do you have any measures or calculations of what you actually, the kind of parts of the costs that make up the cost of actually getting a client versus retaining it, so that you can measure what the difference is?
Do. I mean, the rule of thumb, if you look online, like the rule of thumb is that on average it can cost about 5 times more to acquire a client than it does to retain one.
Okay.
Most of the numbers that you look at will be, and actually customer retention can really have a massive impact on your profits. So the more customers you retain, I mean, if you think about it, if you're retaining a customer, they're much more likely to buy again from you. So the success rate of selling another, it's more difficult for Float. And one of the things that we're working on right now is expansion revenue. So is actually offering additional elements to Float, which we don't really do right now. But more servicing, you know, like Lee's business, he'll do a lot of things. So he'll acquire a client to do X, but he you know, can also do Y and Z. So I think, you know, once it makes sense that once you've got them, that they trust you. So we calculate all of our cost per acquisition, and we're doing a lot of paid media. We do a lot of organic outreach. So we've got different cost per acquisitions modeled out for different types of clients. So we work with accountants and bookkeepers as well as small businesses, and the amount of time that we spend onboarding an accountant and a bookkeeper is massive compared to what it is for an individual business. So we have to understand that, well, that's going to cost us that much money to get them. So what is their lifetime value to us? I think it's much easier. I guess it's much easier for us to model that as a SaaS business than it potentially is for a service business. Because we know how long someone stays and how much they're paying per month, and it's a license fee. So you can work that out probably easier than maybe Lee can. But certainly, you know, the numbers are there and the evidence is there that if you get someone loyal, that they're going to buy again from you. The more they buy, the more that's reaffirming that trust. So that's a positive sort of cycle. And the more you delight them and the better the service that they provide you, then the more likely they are to tell someone about it. And that's not rocket science, to be honest. That's just the way the world works.
Oh, great. The other question I had was, you talked about, so your entry point is a free trial, which is what I do as well.
Yeah.
What do you measure as success of? So obviously lots of people are interested in something that's free. The difficulty is getting them to then pay for something. So
yeah, it is.
How do you measure success there? Do you have like KPIs, or, you know, how do you do that?
Yeah, we do. We use OKRs, so we use objectives and key results, and but we have a scorecard of metrics that we follow every day. So we're understanding how many trials we're getting in and where those trials are coming from, and how much each of those trial leads is costing us. and then the conversion rate of those trials to paid. And actually, a big challenge for us is raising that percentage, Paul, to be honest. It's like a lot of people will come in, and I think it all ties together. So a lot of people will come in a certain mindset, going all the way back to what I was talking about. They'll come in with a certain mindset, and if they're coming in with a negative mindset or a reactive mindset, and they're coming in having not really engaged with the brand, they don't really understand what they're looking at, they don't really get what it's going to provide them, they think it's some sort of magic bullet. Float will not solve your cash flow problems. It'll help you see what they are, and indirectly it can help you solve them, because you can see where they are and plan where they are. But you're not going to plug in a piece of software and miraculously your business is going to be more cash fluid. So I think the more you can prime someone to enter that trial in a good state, the more likely they are to then get value out of that trial. Because if they're entering a trial and they've got 14 days to trial, and actually by the end of that trial, they still don't really understand what it is they're trying to achieve or what it is they're looking at, then then they're not going to pay you. They're not going to pay us our £49 a month. They're just not there yet. So
no, that's great. Thanks.
Right. We've got a Nick. Is it www.floatapp.com? Is that right?
Yeah.
I'll just post that in the chat. No worries. Eileen was just asking about that. Just before we move on, I just wanted, I heard this on a podcast the other day, and just speaking about letting customers understand the process, there was using the word dumb, and what that actually stands for is can you demonstrate it? Can people understand it? Is it measurable? And is it beneficial to the customer? And I just found that really great, especially that it's the word dumb, because I think it's important, because in your industry, you can speak about your jargon and you can assume that people know what you're talking about, but most of the time they don't have a clue. Can I just move? So moving on, just about listening to your customers, Nick, it would be good to understand some sort of tips that you implement about strategies you use to listen to your customers and generate this thing we call the feedback loop. So like really hearing how people are experiencing the product or service.
Yeah, again, I think it's easy to assume. Understanding, it all starts with understanding the customer as much as you possibly can. So understanding that an agency owner's challenges are going to be different from a plumbing and heating business's challenges, with different business models potentially, and they bill differently, and so that cash flow is going to work in a different way. We've got a bunch of work to do still on that, really understanding each individual customer type. So in terms of feedback loops, then we have a piece of software called Intercom that we have on the website, and we have in-app. So that we have a customer support team that's on that live. Alongside that, we have sort of supporting material, but we encourage people to reach out and ask us a question or tell us if they've got a problem. In terms of sort of regular outreach, then we have our customers in email campaigns, so we will be both telling and asking. So we'll be continuing the education process with those clients, but we're also then asking them for feedback, for their thoughts. We'll encourage them to go and review Float. So there's various mechanisms for them to review Float. They'll review via Xero, for instance, or via QuickBooks, or increasingly what we're doing is we're proactively reaching out to customers of different types to understand where their individual challenges are. So we're very much encouraging those customers to we're walking through there. We're trying to put ourselves in their shoes, basically. So we have user experience testers that are setting scenarios for those customers to be able to say, well, look, I want you to try and do this, and we're seeing what their experience is without our assumptions in place, and that has been really powerful. I think as a starting point, the proactivity is the big thing, and I've mentioned this with Lee. Like, try not to wait to be asked, or try not to wait to be told. Make it easy for someone to find you, and make it very clear that they can be clear and open with their communication to you. But ask them. Don't wait for them to tell you, because often if you're waiting for them to tell you, that'll have been a problem, or a challenge will have been festering away for a while before they actually bother to pick up the phone or bother to send you an email. So I would definitely recommend, and you can do this in a relevant way to your business. You know, you can do it via email, you can do it via the phone or SMS or in person. Depends on, you know, the nature of the business, but it may sound obvious, but be proactive. Ask, don't wait to be asked.
Some businesses can be nervous about the feedback loop because they're scared to get feedback. But I think the quicker, we deal with this with clients a lot, the quicker you get over the fear of asking for feedback, the quicker your service or product will evolve and improve.
I think, you know, creating a regular dialogue with a customer, I think, serves two key purposes for me. It's asking them, it reinforces that trust, and it makes them feel like you care about them and that they are being listened to, because you are proactively asking them for their feedback on your product or service, which people like.
Yeah.
And it gives you like crucial feedback about your service or product that is invaluable, and that actually you should listen to, and you should incorporate into whatever your product and service is, because ultimately that's your customers telling you. If you've got that, if you've built that trust and relationship, that is your customers telling you how to build a better product or service.
Yeah. And something we've introduced in our business, just on that whole thing, we're very proactive at providing reports and strategies and stuff like that. But as a backup, sometimes clients are just busy. They've got other problems, or they're spending time with their family, or whatever it is. So what we actually do is we say to clients that we've created time in our diary, and we use a tool, Calendly.
Yeah, Calendly.
So we actually proactively say to clients that we've created space in our diary every week so that you can book an appointment with an account manager and just tell us what you want to discuss, and we'll be available to speak to you when you want to speak to us. And that's been really, a blend of the two has worked really well for us.
Yeah.
And you can just have that plugged into your website, or give a link to your clients, and they can just go on and look at your diary. It's a useful tool.
Calendly is great because you can control, you know, if you want to commit a morning a week or whatever it is, you can basically just open up that segment of your diary for clients to be able to speak to you. That works for us with our accountant and bookkeeper relationships, because there's fewer of them.
Yeah.
It's really, that would be really difficult for us with thousands of clients all over the world and every time zone to open up Calendly links to us based in Edinburgh. So this is why we have Intercom. So Intercom sort of serves a similar purpose in that there is a way for someone to ask, but that's not enough. You know, you need to be asking as well as, so have those channels available for someone to contact you if they need to, but also make sure that you're asking, that you've got emails going out regularly. We survey our clients relatively regularly, and you need to strike a balance between, you know, in terms of how often you're doing that. But generally we get good responses from our surveys if you frame them right, because it's us trying to improve the service that we're providing.
Yeah. Cool. Good stuff. The next thing I wanted to chat about is this, just kind of building on the customer service aspect. There's something I framed in the event copy, and that was about like creating remarkable moments for your customers, and what that kind of looks like in terms of how you reward customers, how you, I guess, how you put a smile on their face on a regular basis. And Nick, we spoke about this, and that actually doesn't always have to be money that you spend. It can be time, it can be resources, it can be additional value. It'd be good to just, Nick, hear from your perspective how you guys have approached putting a smile on your customer's face. That's probably the best way to explain it.
I think in terms of like rewarding, because we went out, as I've said, we went out with extended free trials for new customers, for in reaction to the COVID crisis. Actually, in terms of our existing customers, then I think the insurance industry's seen this and there's been a reaction to it. So there's and mobile phone companies offering stuff to your new clients that actually by definition undercuts and devalues your current clients. So giving them a deal over here, and they're not even a bloody customer yet. Whereas I've got my loyal customers over here who aren't getting access to that. So we were really conscious in terms of with those COVID offers. So with our accountants and bookkeepers, we were providing an extended free trial to new customers. But what we also did was we approached all of our existing partners to offer them a free upgrade. So the way that Float works for our accountants and bookkeepers is they buy multi-license plans. So if they've got 10 clients on, they get a 10 client license, or 20 or 50, basically the price is X more for X more licenses. So what we did is, rather than having our existing clients be like, wait a minute, why are these guys getting this for 3 months for free when I'm paying you for the same thing? What we provided was an upgrade. So we offered a free upgrade to a plan level up to all of our existing partners, which went down really, really well. So I think just bear that in mind when you're going out with any offer. And I know we're talking about retention rather than new client attraction at the moment, but make sure that you're not undercutting and you're not eroding the trust of your current client base by undercutting with a new client offer. I think in terms of reward, it really depends. I think it really depends on the nature of the business. It was very, very different what we would sometimes do in the agency world. We would often be up for awards and we would invite our clients along to an awards dinner, and we would foot the bill for that. And we don't do that at Float. We can't do that at Float. So what we try to do is to offer additional value. So we will offer access to training webinars. We'll offer free access to certification programs. We'll offer free access to master classes. We obviously provide the level of online support that we do. One area that we're looking at is, and that we've been working increasingly on, is actually bringing our customers to the surface. So really incorporating our customers into our brand and communications. So co-promotion. We've got on our website and on our event stands and things, we showcase our customers. So we talk about our customers, what they do, what their business is. We get quotes from them. We generate case studies for them that they're then able to. So actually, we've got a video case study with Andrew Dobby coming out next week or the week after from Made Brave, because they use Float. And so him talking about how his business gets benefit from Float, we'll promote that. So we'll use our advertising budget to promote our product, but also his business. So I think Xero have done a really, really good job of this within their brand. They've got their small business customers front and center within a lot of their brand and marketing campaigns. So I think it's just thinking a little bit, you know, it doesn't have to be X% off, or it doesn't have to be free this. You know, leading with percentages, often leading with free is, you know, can devalue your brand. So we'd always, it's not that we don't do that, but we'd always try to prefer to lead with adding value rather than discount.
Yeah. And one of the best examples I like to use in terms of this creating remarkable moments, and hopefully it's one that people on this call resonate with, but if you've ever been to Doubletree by Hilton, and when you arrive at the reception desk anywhere in the world, you get a warm cookie. I don't know, give me a hands up or a thumbs up if you've ever had a warm cookie at Doubletree Hilton. That it's impossible not to smile. Even if they've screwed up your room, you're sitting in that reception area eating a warm cookie. It's very difficult to get angry at the receptionist. So, and actually what they've done at the start of lockdown is they released their secret recipe for their cookies and shared it, you know, completely free across all their social media accounts. And the traction and buy-in that got from their audience was massive. So that's a really good example. Obviously,
Lee, we have little ducks that we've sort of become synonymous with Float. We go to a lot of industry events, and we have little Float ducks, and people always look out for our ducks. But we recently created gold ducks, so our ducks are usually blue. We recently created gold ducks, which were special, so they were for partners that have achieved a certain status, and we were nominated for the App of the Year at the recent Zero Awards, which was just before lockdown actually, and we didn't win, but there were lots of nominees there, and what we did was we just got a little box, we put some chocolates and a little handwritten message and a gold duck into boxes for all of the other apps and accounting firms that hadn't won.
Yeah.
And we just sent them a wee little message sort of saying, we're all winners because we're all nominated. You know, we were like one of 3 apps nominated out of 700 for App of the Year. So, you know, that's a win. We didn't win the first prize, but just a little, and we got so much. I mean, if you look at our social channels, we got some really good love on our social channels. People were just taking photos of that. Didn't cost us a ton of money, but it really helps the brand. And it really gets you a lot of love and promotion. You know, it sort of really helps consolidate those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from particularly for smaller service-based businesses where the value of a customer is much higher, to be able to surprise your customer. We were consulting with I think it was Archerfield Spa down in East Lothian, and one of the things there was just as simple as like, how can we surprise spa guests? So like, could we, you know, occasionally just give a bottle of Prosecco to a spa guest and just say, we really appreciate your custom, thanks for coming, and just wow them, because actually the knock-on effect of the cost of that bottle of Prosecco versus they're going to tell their friends about that for years to come is just so powerful. So it's maybe thinking outside the box and how you can like get that surprise hit. I
think it's exceeding expectation. So if you've set expectation, then that makes that possible. But like just you know, you've used the word surprise, then I think it's like it does come back to being proactive though, you know, and you being the one that's actually thinking about these things, whether that's customer feedback, whether that is surprise and delight, and it's just trying to, you know, exceed expectation. Yeah,
absolutely. Can I ask, do Float have any, do you spend any time like building relationships with what I would call brand ambassadors, or do you have other people who kind of build trust for you with customers and prospects?
Yeah, we do. We do have a couple of, I mean, I'm not necessarily a massive fan of the term influencer, actually, but we do work with a couple of people who are pretty well known within the sort of cloud accounting world.
Right.
That you know, they use Float though as well, so we're not paying someone to say things that they don't mean.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem with influencers, actually, generally, and people saying, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or I want to be an influencer. That's probably why I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
Because generally what that means is like people are just getting paid to say any old crap about stuff that they're not bothered about.
Yeah.
I think where we really are working really, really hard is to build those, you know, like Yuli, actually, do you know, I think, and Andrew Dobby, or is there's we'll scratch each other's backs sort of scenario. So Andrew was really keen to do that video because he gets a lot of value from Float, and he knows that then we're going to push that, and that should reflect really well on his agency. So we've got a lot of really good relationships with accounting partners that really like Float, and we're working increasingly hard to build up these relationships with these accounting firms who are very pace setting.
Yeah.
So the accountancy industries, you know, there's a vast spectrum of sort of people who are using cloud accounting who are all online, who are purely digital, all the way down to you know, not.
Yeah.
A lot of Xero's partners that they push are also using Float. So we've got accounting partners now that will be in an online accounting masterclass group, or they'll be at an event, who will actually proactively go and say, you need to use Float. Float's better than this, or Float is they'll go over to a customer. We've had it when we've been at events. We've actually had some of our partners come over to our stand to tell somebody else that they should use Float while we've been talking to them.
Yeah.
So, and you know, that honestly, like, that's money can't buy stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, and we're trying to ramp that as much as we possibly can, but we're trying to do it in a real way without just, I think my funniest thing, I remember a few years ago, now this may seem like a tangent, but I remember seeing a glazing van driving around Edinburgh. I can't remember the name of the glazing company, but it was a van, and it had a big picture of Steve Davis on the side of it, which is like the snooker player Steve Davis. And it was like Steve Davis, like, they decided that it would be a really good idea to get Steve Davis to like advocate this local Edinburgh window company. And I was just thinking, like, that is the most random, ridiculous advocacy ever, because there's no danger that Steve Davis got this company to do his windows. Sorry, it's exactly the same as when I think Suzuki got Cristiano Ronaldo to advocate that. Like, there's no danger that Cristiano Ronaldo is driving a Suzuki. So I just think there's been real with this, you know, and if you can harness customers that you've already got rather than paying people to brand advocate for you, if you're doing a good job, they should want to put their hands up.
And particularly for B2B businesses, like, really just lean into partnerships, strategic alliances, look to your customer base to see where a relationship can be strengthened both ways, and how you can share audiences, particularly, like you've just explained. It's a really good way to strengthen relationships.
So we've also then had, you know, cross-referencing of we've referred clients from one of our accounting partners to another, and we've referred small business clients who'll often ask, Flo, do you know any good accountants? We're just launching an accountant and bookkeeper partner directory to help with that, where our partners can add all of their details to this directory. So, you know, there's business in there as well as referral business in there too. So
Good. I think I'm conscious of time. So what, kind of one last question before we open it up to the group. It's kind of twofold. So it's really like, what I'm hoping to tease out here is kind of last golden nuggets. Any customer service tips and tools? And the second part to the question is just practical advice on people getting started with customer retention. It's quite an open question. I appreciate that. So just whatever comes to mind would be useful.
I do think that you can start relatively easily, and I think it's a mindset. And we've covered a lot of this already. So I do think there is like a non-assumptive mindset. So not thinking that the job is done once you've captured a customer, and not then taking them for granted while you find new ones, because I guess it does depend on what you're going to do. But you know, if you're a trades, then I know people who work in trades who just don't advertise because they don't need to, because they do a good job, and that word will just get passed around. So if you think about that, then, you know, doing a good job, setting expectations, over delivering when you can. I think it's really easy to, you know, start a communication loop. You can do it via email, you can do it via SMS, you can do it in person if you've only got a few clients, you can do it on the phone. You don't have to be a multinational business with complex, you know, systems in place to be able to do that. I would definitely recommend like being real. Don't get Steve Davis to advertise, you know, your bathroom products if there's no danger that he's ever going to do that. So I do think, and that's maybe, it feels like really basic advice. Empathize, understand, on board, so that you're setting up your existing customers, you're setting them up for success, because the more likely to stay and the more likely to buy more and the more likely to advocate you if you've got them to that point.
Absolutely. And I think customer retention and customer service really aligns with your mindset as a business owner or someone within a business to continual improvement. So we're always looking in terms of our customers is, what does great look like tomorrow? Because your great today could be out of date tomorrow. And what we find is when customers have that commitment to being 1% better, like naturally they focus on their customer service, and naturally they retain more customers because they're focused on improving their service and their product. And I think both of them align quite well, quite nicely.
And I think being transparent with it, like, don't be afraid of it. I remember, like, back in the day, I was pitching to a big hotel chain in the UK back in my agency days, and they were actually bought by DoubleTree in the end. But I remember we were pitching a new website. We got it, we won it, and a big part of when I was in the pitch was I'd looked at their TripAdvisor reviews, and they had 2 hotels in London at the time, and one of their hotels was, I think, like 7th or 9th rated hotel in the whole of London on TripAdvisor, and the other one was like 15th or something. And like, we're talking alongside the Ritz and the Dorchester, and this was a mid-tier hotel, but they didn't have TripAdvisor reviews anywhere on their site, and we got into it, and they were like, well, we're really worried about, because there's the odd bad review. And and it was like, what are you doing? Like, that the most powerful thing that you can possibly do is for other customers to hear from your happy customers.
Yeah.
So there, you know, there's things like Trustpilot. There are all sorts of review platforms that you can plug in really easily to your website. Be transparent with that. Like, don't be afraid, because someone's saying, and also, you know, resolving difficulties often ends up with even more advocacy than it not happening in the first place. So, you know, as long as you just be transparent with that, don't try to hide.
Perfect. Amazing. Conscious of time, I always say this, but I like to finish on time so that we're not holding up people's days. I'd like to open the room up to any questions. If anyone's got any burning questions, feel free to unmute yourself. And anyone that needs to leave, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very much, Nick, for your time. Just to line up next week's episodes, it's the last 2 episodes of the series. Next Tuesday, we are focused on growing your network and running great events. And next Thursday, we're speaking about company culture, and we've got Andrew Dobie from Made Brave and Kirsty Innes joining us on that. So hopefully you can join us for the last 2. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and feel free to ask any questions. Thanks, Kim.
Nick, just a really quick question. Thanks, that was really, really excellent insight. In terms of your lead generation, is there one channel which you find more powerful in bringing customers in for you to then move them down the pipeline, if it's paid social, organic, or search? Or
I mean, Google Ads are the most efficient for us in terms of paid versus any of the social platforms. We test we test everything, to be honest. Organic, I think in terms of just inbound, really getting on the content side of things, really being well ranked organically is by far our biggest lead generator. Float's been around a while, so we've got decent SEO. We've got a decent SEO equity. But we're looking at that all the time. It's a challenge all the time. We've got new competitors coming in to the market all the time. Making sure that you're doing your research, that you're potentially using an agency, who knows what we're talking about. Don't try and do everything yourself. We've got a marketing team in house who are really excellent. So we're on that as much as we possibly can. But it's a really competitive environment, and we're working globally. So. Harnessing partnerships as well, I would say. So building those partnerships with the likes of QuickBooks and Xero, so we get quite a lot of referrals from their platforms.
No, thank you. That's interesting. I saw the Andrew Dobie video, and I thought it was great. And I think many agency owners will look at that as well by way of endorsement and think, well, if Andrew uses it well, I should have a look. So I think that will be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we want to get into is actually really deep diving into those individual sectors. I think it's something that it's easy to presume that all your customers are the same, and they're not. And I've worked in the agency world for over 2 decades, so I know that space, and I know the challenges that are there, and I know that Float can work really well for agencies. It'll work differently for different types of business, as I've said. But there's nothing more powerful to an agency owner. If I'm an agency owner, I'm running an agency, and I see an ad, I come across Float, and there's a picture of a guy in a hard hat, and it's talking really generically about cash flow. I'm much less likely for that to resonate with me than if it was Andrew Dobie on a video talking about it. So that's, again, not rocket science. It's like knowing your customer.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Anyone else got any final questions? No, I think that's us. Cool. We'll bring that to an end. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.